Freddie, thanks for coming out this evening. We wanted to wait a few minutes for those who might have gone to the Cosmo Theater, where a lot of forums and debates are held. You might have found yourself standing there, but glad you found the conference center at Frederick Community College. My name is Frank Mitchell. I'm the program director and afternoon co-host at 9:30 WFMD Radio, and glad you could make it. I'm going to get right to it. I want to thank Frederick Community College for offering the space. We have at-large candidates for the Frederick County Council primary with June 26th, now less than, 2 weeks away, and early voting just about to start. So the forum, if you weren't aware, this evening is going to really focus and bear down on a couple issues, to just put them generically: growth and the environment. So I ask if you could hold off applause until everybody's finished. Try to have this go until 8 o'clock and cut it off then. We have our timekeeper, Emily, in the front row. I'm going to help her cut anybody off that goes over a minute. Janice, if you'll hold up your hand, is going to collect cards. If you have a question for the candidates and we can work it in, just raise your hand and she'll bring in an index card to ask questions after we ask questions from the host organizations. And the host organizations this evening are the Clean Water Fund, the Climate Change Working Group of Frederick County, Friends of Frederick County, Green Frederick, Maryland League of Conservation Voters Education Fund, Potomac Conservancy, RALE, and 1,000 Friends of Maryland. And we thank all of them for helping put this together. If you did not make it this evening, then you're probably watching us on video, and there will be many opportunities if you go to any of the host organizations to watch video of tonight's forum. It's a real busy evening locally with other events going on, so we're really glad that you could make it here. Glad the candidates could make it. So the way this is going to go is 1 minute each for opening statements from each of the candidates, and then each of the candidates will have 2 minutes to respond to questions that we hope to get from the audience and also from the host organizations. I'll be going in different orders, but we'll continue to go down the line. And I guess we'll start with the candidate opening statement from Galen Claggett.
Thank you. We're good. Okay. First, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight. I think I'll start off by just telling you a little bit about who I am. First, I'm a Democrat, not a member of an organized party by any means. And I have a company called Claggett Enterprises. We've been in business for 31 years. I started out as a teacher, wound up as a vice principal and principal, worked at Walkersville, Brunswick, and Lincoln High Schools, also taught at TJ High School. I think what I bring to the table that's important is 20 years of experience, 8 years as a county commissioner, 4 of those years as chairman of the board, and 12 years in Annapolis, and I was on the appropriations committee for 10 of those 12 years, and I was chairman of a subcommittee. In addition to that, I put forth a number of bills relevant to or pertaining to the environment. One example is getting rid of phosphorus in fertilizer. That did pass. Thank you.
And thank you. Our next candidate, Cavante Duckett.
Good evening. My name is Cavante Duckett. Born and raised here in Frederick County. First off, thank you to everyone for being here. As we heard, there's a lot of events going on tonight, so it does mean a lot to see you all in this room. To the host, we appreciate this opportunity. Again, born and raised here. I'm glad to be at FCC on tonight, as I served as the president of our Student Government Association here for 2 years, and so it's just good to be at FCC one more time. Why am I running for office? Well, I want to give a voice to the next generation of leaders. I care about education, I care about small businesses, I care about attracting and retaining young people, and I care about each and every one of you and the issues that matter to you the most. So I look forward to answering all the questions on tonight. I look forward to continued dialogue, and I look forward to serving you on June 26th if we make it through the primary. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next candidate, Kai Hagan.
Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the 8 organizations that are sponsoring this event, and I appreciate I hope many more people, perhaps hundreds or thousands of people, that'll watch this later, because I think this is an important issue, and I hope a lot of people care enough about it to watch. I've been doing environmental work professionally with many different organizations as a volunteer and as an elected official on various boards and commissions, probably 90% of my life since I was 24 years old, so it's 36 years ago if you want to do the math. I was a county commissioner here for 4 years, and I am very proud of the record that we had as a board collectively and individually on those issues, from the incinerator to solid waste, land use, the environment, the forest resource, stream buffers and other things, and I hope that we'll get a chance to talk about, I expect we will, some of those things today. But one of the key points I want to make is that it's not just what I do, it's always been who I am.
Thank you much. Our next candidate, Susan Rader Jesse.
Well, I want to thank everybody. Thanks for the organizing this, and thanks for everybody for coming just to hear what we're all about. Give you a little background. I grew up in Frederick County. I love this county, and I wanted to have an opportunity to give back to a community that has been so good to me. I've lived in 4 of the 5 districts, council districts, so I have a good idea, I think, what their strengths and weaknesses are. I grew up on a family farm. Agriculture and farming was very close, dear to my heart, and that means a lot to this county as well. I've been married for 33 years. I have 2 adult children, and I'm a graduate of TJ. I found love for science in 10th grade biology, so I went to Hood College, and I got a degree in biology. We spent 8 years as a bench scientist, and then I went back at night and got my MBA, and I've been on the business side of science ever since. I've worked on multi-million-dollar budgets, and I have a broad experience in business development. And one of the companies I worked for did a lot with algae research and renewable energy. So that was a great thing to represent and go to those conferences. I've also worked in economic development and the local incubator here, growing jobs locally. Thank you.
Thank you. Next candidate, Justin Kiska.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Our microphone is broken.
No,
Oh, all right.
Just a minute.
Oh, there we go. All right, well, again, as everyone has said, thank you all for having us this evening. My name is Justin Kiska. I am a small business owner here in Frederick. My family owns the Way Off Broadway Dinner Theater. And unlike everyone else up here, I am a Republican. And I'm proud of that, but I'm also very happy to be here. I specifically wanted to be here tonight because I've had some great opportunities working in Washington, D.C. for people like Elizabeth Dole and Jack Kemp and Bill Bennett. And these were the people who were in government when politics wasn't a dirty word, and when you could disagree and debate issues, but still be friendly and still go out afterwards and have dinner together. So I'm here to learn as much as to discuss the issues tonight. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to talking about them.
Thank you. And the next candidate, last but not least, Mark Long.
Mike, working. No? It's not. Okay.
You want to get it out of the way?
Musical mics.
There you go.
Oh, that'll make it easier.
So yes, Mark Long, and I'm happy to be here, and I appreciate all of you being here this evening. I was born and raised here in Frederick County. I've lived here most of my life, lived a few other places, but kept coming back because I really think that Frederick County is a wonderful place to live. It has a lot going for it. And I'm running for office because I want to ensure that it remains a wonderful place to live for everyone. And one of the most important things to ensure that is how we manage growth and development, and make sure we do it intelligently and smartly and in the right places at the right time. And of course, our environment is crucial, and we have to protect that, and there's any number of things we need to put in place to be sure we're doing that. I can't remember a time when I didn't compost. My parents were composting before I was born. My father was just fanatic about reusing things. He took down the Thurmont Town Hall and reused it to build the first home that I grew up in. So this was ingrained in me from early on, and I want to put a lot of that in place and expand what we're already doing. So thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you for keeping it on time. Here is the first question. You'll have 2 minutes, and I would like to start with Mr. Duckett. Frederick County's population projected to grow by 25,000 people to about 332,000 residents. That's by the year 2040. The draft livable Frederick Master Plan is intended to chart a course for where and how the county is going to grow in the next 20 years. What are your thoughts about livable Frederick, and where and how should the county grow?
Thank you for the question. It's pretty broad as well, but I will, livable Frederick, I think it's a challenge for us to really plan to 2040. Daily in the world we live in, we see things changing right before our eyes. I mean, we can look at technology and all these things that we have at the palm of our hands, and to say that we're going to plan out for 2040, I find to be very challenging. But I do think that it is our job as elected officials to look to the future, but not to say that we're going to stick to a certain plan, because I think things are ever evolving, ever changing. And so going forward, I'm still reviewing this large document of a livable Frederick plan. And as I stated, I don't think right now we can give a definite answer on where we're going to be in 2040.
Very good, thank you. Mr. Haney?
That's working? Okay.
Yep.
I've been on the Energy and Environment Working Group for Livable Frederick from the beginning. I've attended most or many of the steering committee meetings, a lot of the workshops, some of the other meetings, most of the public hearings and planning commission meetings on this issue, and I'm very impressed with it. As someone who spent 2.5 years working as a commissioner on the 2010 comprehensive plan, which I thought was a big step forward in terms of our ability to really engage a lot of stakeholders, encompass a broad range of elements in the community as part of our broader planning, I've been particularly impressed with the effort in Livable Frederick to be inclusive, to reach out to the community, to engage all the stakeholders, and to bring into play a broad range of information and metrics from around the country, and in some cases other parts of the world, in terms of what's working and what's not working, and look at Frederick in the context of changes. It would be irresponsible for us not to understand and take into account looking ahead, like the doubling of our senior population, or impacts on our environment, or transit needs, and other things like that. So is it perfect? No. Is it everything I would want if it were entirely up to me instead of a community process? No. But overall, I've been very supportive of the process, very supportive of the plan. And I would make the point that it's looking at 2040 as sort of a way to gauge some of the changes in our community. But there's by no means any effort here to create something that's supposed to be the same between now and 2040 for the next 22 years. We're going to get new information. We're going to review the plan every few years, no matter what. We're going to have political changes. We're going to have new technologies, autonomous cars, changes in energy, agriculture that are going to shift. So what it does is it provides a really solid foundation for moving forward, for that planning. One of the unique things about this plan, and like many other comprehensive plan processes, is that it didn't include the map. It didn't include the land use designations and zoning. And so that's something that's going to come later. That's something that every community has to do. Livable Frederick provides a basis for doing that intelligently.
Thank you, and Ms. Peter Jessica.
I think I've read parts, not all of Livable Frederick, especially the ones that related to where I've known, where I've lived, and things like that. And I tell you, anytime you get community involvement that spent many hours on a document and putting that together and just pulling information, that's a huge task. And I applaud the volunteers and the people that were involved in pulling that together. I know there are people that don't even want to look at it, but when we get that kind of involvement of the community, we have to look at it. And what I've read so far, it's an incredible vision for our county. It almost takes me back to what it was like when I grew up here. It gave me that feeling that you could ride your bikes anywhere, you could walk anywhere, and yet it is going from where we are as a population. And as Kai was saying, our population is going to increase, especially the senior population. So having a plan like this that would provide opportunities to support that population is incredible, and something that we should continue to consider. When I've been involved in short and long-term planning, I agree with Cavante. I think going out to 2040 is a little long. I know personally my life, as well as we know with the economy, things could change very quickly. But I think it's something that we can take a grasp at. It's an incredible vision. I really enjoyed reading the document when I had the time and the different parts of it. I think it can be used in combination with our current comp plan. And just, to me, it really enhances that in a way that everyone wants to enjoy the life here, not only working here, but enjoy the communities they live in and have accessibility to things by walking, by biking, and things like that. So I think it's a good vision for the population that we're going to see continue to explode, and with unique municipalities, so everything's not focused around Frederick City.
Thank you. And Mr. Kiska.
I wish livable Frederick hadn't been proposed in an election year, because it has turned it into such a divisive issue, and it is just something that people are just arguing about. And it could be the best plan in the world, but there are people out there who are disagreeing with it simply to disagree with it, because it's an election year and they want to win points. I've gone through the plan twice. It is a great vision. I love what it looks like. My concern is there's not enough detail and fact and certainty. It is the vision. So it gives us a starting point, but you need the comprehensive plans, you need the facts, you need the zoning, you need the details that I do not believe livable Frederick provides. Would I love to see some of the things in that plan come to fruition? Absolutely. But as the plan stands now, I don't think I could support it. I wish we could take some more time, because as we've said, if this plan is supposedly supposed to go out to 2040, why do we have to rush it through and approve it this year when it was just proposed this year, especially considering it's an election year? If we could wait another year to actually talk about this when there's no votes being cast, I think we might have a little bit more of an honest conversation about it.
Thank you. Mr. Long.
So, first of all, if I'm not mistaken, I believe livable Frederick was first proposed in mid-2016 or so, and not this year. And it's been in process since that time, and it has elicited input from folks all around the county to create the first vision, the overarching vision for the plan. Comments were solicited from anyone in the county that wanted to provide input into it, and there were several thousand folks that provided input, and something like 15,000 comments that went into the vision. So it was getting input from many, many people from around the county back in 2016. So this isn't something that just happened in election year. And as far as, not being able to extend out to 2040, of course we don't know what's going to happen in 2040. But the thing is, if you don't have a plan for where you would like to be, what your ideal vision is, then it's just chaos. Anything can happen. So, a lot of things that aren't good for us can happen. So if at least we have some direction to go, it helps get us there. Sure, we may have to adjust along the way, obviously. I mean, that's the way it is with any strategic plan. But as you might tell, I like the way this came about. I like the process. I like the whole thing of getting input from people all around the county. And then work groups from experts and stakeholders in many different fields came together to work out the actual nitty-gritty part of the plan. And it deals with a number of things that affect our community. There's a category called community. There's one called environment. There's one called economic development, and health, I think, is the other one. My mind's slipping a little bit. But it doesn't just deal with zoning like many other plans have done. It deals with everything that is involved in our community, including transportation.
Thank you. And Mr. Pike.
Thank you. Well, a whole lot's already been said. I'll provide my 2 cents. I think the vision is fine, but that vision has to be rolled into the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan has always been a vision. The question is, what kind of vision has it been? Since 1959, we've had smart growth. That's a fact. And we've been very careful about how we've grown under that system. In and around centers of population on public services was our mandate. Did we fail sometimes? Green Valley is an example of how we did fail at times. But that was That was the posture, that was the position we took. So if we're gonna do the vision, and I think the vision is a great idea, but it has to be rolled in the comp plan. We have to have certainty in the comp plan. It has to be predictable, it has to be consistent, and it has to be flexible. We're saying we don't want something that's rigid. So if we use this, and I think that's fine, we'll tie it in, we can tie it into the comp plan, but that has to involve those things I mentioned. And the zoning is a part of that. So in essence, it's a great idea. Will it work? It depends on how we fold it into the comp plan and how we bend with it as we grow. And we have done that historically. We've been able to grow with some semblance of common sense, even though some people don't believe so. If you fly over this county, you can see the plan in action. The population's concentrated in those 12 municipalities and around those municipalities. There are great open spaces, a lot of farmland. That didn't happen just by chance. That happened by design. So I don't want to throw that out and say we're just going to leave it. What we're bringing new, I think we fold into that. And so that would be my position. I want to read it carefully again. I've been reading it. It's a long document, and I'm not opposed to it, but I want to be careful. Property rights are important. Thank you.
Thank you all. Let's move on to our next question, and the issue is traffic. Traffic becoming, of course, a significant problem for Frederick County residents and commuters. Several alternatives have been suggested for I-270, US 15, other critical county traffic arteries. What ideas do you have for the county's role in alleviating traffic congestion and traffic safety problems? Let's start with Guy Hagan.
Well, I mean, traffic is a huge pain in the rear for everyone in the county, even those who don't commute. Increasingly so, traffic congestion is a problem. It's a quality of life issue. But we've done some things well and some things not so well when it comes to planning, comprehensive planning, and transit planning in Frederick County. And, you know, when the population of the county was half what it is today, 40% of the people, 41% of the people in the county commuted out of the county for work. Now it's double, twice as many jobs, twice as many people. The percentage of people who commute out of the county for work is the same. We talk about new jobs, more people can live here and work here, but our dynamic close to Washington and Baltimore means that people are going to continue to leave the county for higher paying jobs or live in the county for lower cost housing, and increasingly we're having a problem with more and more people who work here and, you know, are our nurses, our police officers, firefighters, retail workers, and others who can't afford to live here and are either struggling to live here or commuting to Washington County, Jefferson County, Adams County. We're not going to solve our problem just by building more roads. One, we're not a high priority for the state. We're not going to be. The population centers in Washington, Baltimore, along those corridors are always going to get more money for roads and transit. And I know people want 270, but if we do 270 and we widen it to 4 lanes or whatever, it's going to take 16 years of construction. It's going to cost $6 to $12 billion. It's going to be a huge pain for years, and for a very short time there'll be modest relief perhaps before it fills up again. You know, induced use is a common, well-studied, documented phenomenon. We have to build our community smartly, reduce trips, support public transit, create more walkable communities, take into account what's happening with autonomous vehicles, look at bus rapid transit, all kinds of things like that we don't have time to get into right now are more important than wasting money we don't have and will never have enough of to just build bigger and more road.
Thank you. And Susan, Reader Jesse.
I currently commute down I-270 and it ranges to Rockville. And it ranges from, you know, a little over an hour to sometimes 2 hours just to get to work. It's horrible. That's going to come to an end. I just got job locally, so I'm excited about that. But that commute, it is horrible. 40% of our staff does go through there. But it's not just Frederick County that's going through I-270. It's people coming from out of state that don't live in Frederick County, that live in West Virginia, that live in Pennsylvania. It's a tough thing to take control. It's a state road. There's been a lot of promises. It is handled by the state. But there's one thing that and 15 is what it is. I think we can all relate to sitting on traffic on 15 any time of the day. There are issues with that need to be addressed. But one thing I did learn from my dad, I was with him one time in a mega conference in Ocean City. I don't know if you all remember when coming through Market Street in Frederick was just gridlocked, coming from 85 in that area, and you couldn't get, and they were looking for money from East Street. It's all about the partnerships that you create at the state level and looking for money and building those partnerships. And I remember him getting signing the deal of getting the $90 million for the East Street extension. And I saw what it takes. And we're just gonna have those partnerships. Less money is coming from the federal for roads, and less money is coming from the state. We've had to do a lot of road improvements here with city and county partnerships, which is a great thing to do, but it ties up money for other things. I mean, I truly think that Frederick County is at a point for commerce. I think the state needs to pay attention to us because we have commerce. People coming off 95, they're going 270 to 70 to 81. So I think we have a lot that we can say that they need to pay attention to. And I would be one to go to the state and partner with people, our delegation and our senators, to say that we need help in this county. We've done our part, city and county partnerships, but we need more money to take care of congestion. And also transit and all those are just great ideas as well.
Thank you. Justin Kissinger.
Obviously, the quote-unquote quick fix is to add more lanes. But I mean, Kai's right. I mean, it will take too long to build them. And then if you think about it, it's like a river. You've got the water flowing through there, you extend the river, the water just fills up the river again. It's going to be the exact same with the cars. So, yes, it's a quote-unquote quick fix, but I think we need to look at different ways to get the cars off the street. We want to have jobs here in Frederick County. Have the people work here so that they don't have to be on those roads. So we need some aggressive and innovative new economic development plans so that people don't have to drive down the roads. Who knows, maybe one day, certainly not in my lifetime, but maybe one day it'll be the exact opposite and people will be coming from Montgomery County. And they'll be the ones that have to worry about the traffic getting back and forth. But it does come down to the money, and yes, it is a state, a local, and a federal issue. We all have to work together, especially in this region. There is not one thing that the county is going to be able to do to fix all of this without our legislators in Annapolis and without help from the federal government. So we do need to work on those partnerships to come up with a plan how we can all work together.
Mark Long.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot of different efforts, and it's going to take partnerships, a lot of different entities coming together to work on this, and it's an ever-moving target, and we gain a little ground and then the target keeps moving away. But there's a lot of components to it. I think we need to focus much more on effective mass transit, more bus lines going down 270 to Montgomery County, DC, wherever. Try to work with Mark to get more Mark trains back and forth for sure. Build our communities smartly, more mixed-use development, make sure they're walkable and bicycle friendly, more transit within, the bigger city of Frederick, and extending whenever it's feasible out to the outlying areas. Recently, Jan Gardner had a pilot program, or initiated a pilot program to have more buses going to North County where I live. So we'll see how that works to see if there's enough ridership to make that feasible. There's some education required to make sure people are aware that those services are there and utilize them, and then try to expand on them. There may be needs for some additional lanes in some places, certainly around Frederick City. I think that's already in the pipeline to add an additional lane, so that hopefully will help. I'm concerned about how things will get bogged up on the interchanges and the exit ramps and all that, so we'll see. Yeah, it's going to take a lot of different people coming together, a lot of different partnerships. Look at it in many ways. We have to get used to not relying on cars so much, but I do think it will have an impact when we have more self-driving cars that are intelligent and drive more consistently and smoothly, and that when that happens, will help someone.
Thank you. Galen Clay.
Thank you. Well, first, let me tell you that a lot of the traffic on 270 and 70, as has been said, is not local traffic. 17% of our workforce, I think, comes from Washington County. There are people coming from Pennsylvania to go to work, as well as the tourist factor, as far as the roads are concerned. So one of the things we need to do is keep the local traffic off those roads. That means we have to be aggressive about our capital projects, and I don't think we have been as aggressive as we should be, so that the inner loop and things like that are completed, and then we have to really work on educating people to stay off the interstates. I drive through the city because it's a pleasure, plus I can get there faster probably, or most often faster. So I've had experience in working to bring money here. I worked on the East Street approach for the 90 million. I voted for the gas tax to do the 15 interchange. We're going to hopefully connect that to Christopher's Crossing pretty soon. But it's important for us, and during my time we did Crestwood Village, we did Possumtown Pike. We did, during my time as a county commissioner, those roads, we had an aggressive capital program, and I think that's what we need to do now. In addition to that, we asked for RALE in 1980 to Washington, and we were laughed at. Then we asked for light rail, and we were laughed at again. So we really need to press that in addition to our own project. And what I bring to the table is I served on the capital committee for the state of Maryland. I know how to get the state to us and also the federal government to get projects that we need here. And they're not all roads, but roads are a factor. So it's a multifaceted issue, and it takes, it's going to take a good bit of time to work all that out. But we can't let developers build all the roads. We have to be aggressive and build some of those roads. Thank you.
Cavante Duckett.
Transportation is always going to be an issue. One thing for certain, two things for sure. As a young person, one of the greatest days or the greatest joys of my life was when I went and got my driver's license. It was a big moment for me. And I think for young people, we want to drive. We want to be able to have our own car. We want to go places. And so this is an issue that is going to continue to grow. And if we can expand the roads, we can change routes, we can do all these things. But I do know this, those roads will become congested again. And so we have to look at the bigger picture. We have to bring everyone to the table so that we're having a tough conversation. Because if we just say, hey, let's expand the highway, what's going to happen? We're going to see more and more cars on that highway. So we have to think logically and really do some research and even bring in private organizations or private folks to do this research for us. Because one thing that we do know is we up here do not have all the answers. And so it's going to take all of us coming together to see what we can do that is going to be beneficial for everyone. And as I stated before, I hate driving down Market Street. One of the worst things ever. And you're lucky if you can make all the lights. And so we have to look at this thing. And I would love to see more walkable pathways. I would love to see more bike lanes in and around Frederick County, not just in the city, but throughout Frederick County. And one thing that we need to do is push public transit. You know, a lot of people do not know the resource of public transportation. And so if we can educate the community on this valuable resource that we do have, then that's what we need to do. Because far too often electronic buses, we just had new electronic buses in the city of Frederick, in Frederick County. That is amazing. If we can see that expand, see that grow, I think we'll be moving in the right direction.
Thank you all very much. Let me take a moment to remind those who might have come late, or remind everybody else, if you have a question, just raise your hand and Janice will come to you with an index card, and if it's on topic and we can fit it in, we'll certainly be happy to do that. Let's move on to the third question from our sponsoring groups. Too many residents and visitors, the farms, forests, and waterways of Frederick County are defining features of the landscape. As a council member, what policies or programs would you strengthen or support in order to enhance and protect these resources for future generations? Let's start with Susan Reeder. Jesse.
Yes, the mic. Well, thanks for the question. I had the opportunity growing up here. My parents had a cabin along the Monocacy, so I know what it's like to go there on the weekends and go there for years and enjoy the fishing and swimming in the Monocacy and just living that dream and boat riding. It was great, and I want to make sure we preserve that. There's lots of things we can do. I'm familiar with the Monocacy River Plan, and the board recommended. I mean, we have to work with our farming community. They want to take care of their land. I do believe that. There may be a few that don't. And so I believe the farmers and the landowners that live along and work along the river want to have clean water as well. I mean, there's all kinds of, the first thing you want to do is make sure there's enough forest along the river to capture any kind of nitrogen and things that might be runoffs from the farmland and things like that. There would be buffers and all those kinds of things to make sure, because we want to keep our rivers. That's our drinking water. And I think everybody wants that. And a farmer wants to make sure he keeps his cattle to certain things. So I think it's an educational process. Like I said earlier, I grew up on a farm, and we have incredible farming communities here. Some that have learning how to farm again, new businesses on their farm. We can teach them, educate them on organic methods as well of farming. They don't want to be told what to do, but I think if you talk to them and show them the features and benefits, how it would benefit them and how it would benefit our waterways, I think that's a win situation, because right now there's a big divide between the two. And you know, what I've learned about regenerative agriculture, I read up on that a lot, and that puts nutrients back in the soil. And I think there's all kinds of things that you can have discussions with. But again, it's meeting and sitting down with the people that are directly involved along the waterways and coming up with a winning plan that'll benefit everyone and all the citizens.
Thank you, Justin Kiska.
Can I just have the question one more time, just to make sure I got the gist here?
Sure. To many residents and visitors, the farms, forests, and waterways of Frederick County are defining features of the landscape. As a council member, what policies or programs would you strengthen or support in order to enhance and protect these resources for future generations?
There's no question that those are our history. That is what has made Frederick the great place that it is. And it is beautiful. There are some times where you could see the sun setting over the fields, and it's gorgeous. So we do need to make sure we keep that, because it's unique to us. You know, we don't want to be Montgomery County. I don't think they can see a sunset. And I think one of the ways to do that is going to be controlling growth and making sure we don't just have urban sprawl and growth for growth's sake. Because you don't want to just build and lose the beautiful qualities of the county. Now, I'm pro-growth, but that's as long as there's a plan. You know, I don't want to see us losing all the trees, losing all the fields out there. I don't want to see huge houses going up along the river. I mean, because then, yes, then it does get into the water quality that we're talking about. And I mean, you could have a whole debate on that issue in itself. But the preservation of what we have, we just need to have a balance. I mean, we don't have to say there can be no growth, there can be no change, there can be no development, but we need to make sure that we're not overdoing it. There always needs to be a balance in this.
Thank you, and Mark Long.
So it will take a number of different things. It will take protecting the Monocacy, and at both county council hearings that address this issue, I spoke in support of the Monocacy River Plan. I think it's important that we protect the Monocacy, and yes, I understand the concerns of property owners like Mr. Crone back there that's looking at me right now. But we need to enter into conversations and come together and figure out a way to protect the river for all of us. And it also will involve smart growth and intelligent growth and concentrating our growth around the existing town centers or growth centers. I was meeting with the Frederick County Builders Association this morning, and we were talking about, and actually in a discussion yesterday in the Affordable Housing Council with folks from planning, talking about the idea of going upward. And I know many people get alarmed when they hear that. I believe in more density in some of our town centers. And that's part of the way that you get smart growth and intelligent growth and have it more walkable and have more multi-use available. That's going to take some talking. I mean, there'll be as much resistance to that as there is to the Monocacy River plan, I imagine. But it's a conversation we need to have, and people need to think about that. Because that's one of the ways that it will take to preserve our farmlands and the open spaces. You can't keep going horizontally, because eventually you will keep creeping out, no matter how concentrated you keep it around the town centers. You will keep going out, because we will continue to grow. There's no escaping that, and so it's a matter of how we manage all that. And you know, the farm preservation program can always use more money. I'm not sure where we're going to find that, but it's something to look at. Fortunately, our farms are diversifying. We need to, you know, buy local and eat local and encourage our farmers as much as we can.
Thank you. And Gail and Clay.
Thank you. Well, first, on the subject of the waterway, or water, ground level and underground level, I would point out to you that during my first year in the House of Delegates, I put a bill in, 1164, don't have my glasses, had to look at that, which really created a task force to study water. And I was served on that task force, and what came out of that, Frederick County was one of the pilot projects, along with for surface water. Groundwater was done in another county on the Eastern Shore. And what came out of that was a stark realization that this is a bigger project, a bigger program, or a bigger need than just Frederick County. And so there were recommendations put together in that package, and I think a lot of them have been implemented. So I have a history of being aware of that. Also, I pushed hard for ag preservation. I supported and would continue to support conservation zoning. If you fly over the county, you can see all the wonderful conservation areas. We need to protect them. I'd support open space. I think those have been really good programs. And the park system is really an addition to all that, promoting and keeping the beauty of the county intact. So it's not a simple, as everything is, answer, but it does really require us to pay attention to all the parts, and at the same time understand that we're a part of a bigger concern that involves all of Maryland and probably the country, especially if you look at the Chesapeake Bay, when we had people who didn't honor the pact that was established, and we had to have the president come in and press people to do Pennsylvania, Washington, and Virginia what they should do. Maryland did its job. So it's a bigger picture. We need to be aware of that and work toward that end. Thank you.
You, Devontae Duggins.
First thing, we really want to protect and preserve our rich heritage that we have here in Frederick County. Don't want to lose that at all. And so one of the big things that I really want to look at is really dealing with our local farmers. I mean, this is their property, they're the property owners. Let's bring them to the table and keep them in the conversation, not only when we're making decisions, but throughout the entire process. I think they are left out, and when we keep them in the conversation, we will be able to come to some sort of common ground. But when we make decisions as elected officials, because we're Democrats or because we're Republicans, I think we forget why we're elected. We were elected to serve the people. And so we really need to keep our property owners in mind when we were making these big decisions.
Thank you, Kai Hagan.
Well, when you say farms, forests, and rivers, you're basically saying, you know, add streams there, you're talking about our natural landscape in general, and our open space, which farms are not part of the natural landscape, but they are open space, and they do have a different environmental impact and economic benefit and part of our culture and history. We have a goal, a long-standing goal in the county of preserving 100,000 acres of farmland. We've preserved 57. That actually puts us in the top 10 in the entire country, believe it or not, for individual counties. And so we've done a good job. It's a whole lot of different state, local, public, and private programs that do that. They need to be better funded. We need to make better progress. It's only going to get more expensive. It's only going to get more difficult, but we need to do that. I've supported the strengthening of the Forest Resource Ordinance when I was a commissioner. It was weakened since then. It was partly restored since then again. It's not strong enough. I think we have to be understanding of the challenge when it comes to development and where we're going to prioritize development, but I think we need to take a somewhat smarter and better approach that says, as we grow, we do not have to accept that we will have less biological diversity, fewer forests, dirtier rivers, dirtier air, and everything else, and say, how do we maintain or improve or enhance the amount of forest that we have, the quality of our rivers, the biological diversity of our community, our green infrastructure? How do we connect them and make sure they're big enough and managed properly enough? We can do that. We can add 150,000 people to this county over the course of the next 22 years, or however fast we're going to get there. And we can do less than that, sprawl all over Kingdom Come, and have a tremendously terrible environmental impact, more expensive infrastructure, lower quality of life in a lot of ways. Or we can do it smartly, add those people in the right places, in the right times, with the right diversity of houses and densities and everything else, and enhance. Our goal needs to be to enhance our natural landscape, our farm communities, our rivers, our forests, not just to see how much more slowly we might see them diminish in quality.
Very good. Next question. The Maryland Commission on Climate Change has predicted more frequent and intense spring storms in 2018. During a recent storm, roads and bridges failed, streets, businesses, and houses flooded, toilets overflowed with backed up sewage, the wastewater treatment plant on Gas House Pike took on more water than it could handle, which caused the diversion of millions of gallons of untreated wastewater into Carroll Creek. It's been said that the so-called 100-year floods, so-called 50-year floods are happening more frequently now. So the question is, as we have to figure out how to deal with that, how would you deal with that as a council member? And we'll start this time with Justin Kiskin.
Well, I'm a business owner, and when I make decisions, I need information. I don't have the background in stormwater management and everything that it takes to solve this problem. So I would need to turn to the experts. I would need to talk to the engineers, to talk to the planners, because this is definitely not a problem that, I don't think this is a problem any of us really even thought was going to be a problem until recently. I mean, yes, Ellicott City flooded before, and they said, okay, that's the 1,000 years. 3 years later, 2 years, 3 years later, it happened again. I don't think any of us were ready for this. So this is something we are now going to have to think about. And to do that, as I said, I need the information. I need to talk to people and find out what we can do and how we can do it and how we can afford to do it. So I would have to turn to other people to find out before I could say, well, this is what the plan's going to be.
Okay, Mark Long.
It's going to require many different efforts. There's not going to be any silver bullet to remedy this. In the larger picture, we have to combat climate change. Now that's not going to happen overnight to remedy that, obviously. But we need to start doing that. We need to take aggressive measures to try to reverse climate change. And that requires many things, you know, decreasing the amount of gas-burning cars that we have, decreasing the amount of, you know, oil-burning furnaces in people's houses, you know, any number of things like that. Decreasing the amount of power that we're using carbon as an energy source. Going to electric buses, electric cars, all of that. Planting more forests. But this is a long-term thing. As far as near-term, it will take some study in different places as to how to control the stormwater runoff. You know, for example, in North Frederick City along North Market where the Y got flooded, I'm not sure they've figured out yet what is going on there. Obviously, the infrastructure can't handle the rain. So, you know, the city's going to have to do study that, like Justin says, and figure out how to handle that. But we can expect more storms like this. So people are going to have to come together and try to figure out how we'll handle this in the short term. There's probably not going to be many short-term fixes. But going forward, we need to decrease the amount of impervious surfaces, and there's many ways of doing that. As builders build, I'd like them to look at porous concrete and in driveways, have pervious pavers and that sort of thing. We can do green roofs on municipal buildings, and any number of things like that.
Thank you. Alan Clark.
Thank you. Well, as has been stated, it's a very complex problem again, but I harken back to 1972 when we had a huge flood, and all the bridges were washed out, all the small wooden bridges. And so we came up with a new system of design for those bridges, and we had some big bridges that were wiped out. What it pointed up was that the design features needed to be changed, and we did that. So my point would be to look at where we had the failure, do some kind of an analysis of what the system looks like that conducted, that allowed that failure. Let's face it, a lot of the stormwater is aged, especially in the city of Frederick, needs to be worked and replaced. And so what we need to do is prioritize those things and go to work systemically to fix them. We put 25 wooden bridges to sleep and put in a new design. We did that in 2 years during that time. So it can be done. It's going to cost money, but we should prioritize it, do an analysis so we know what we have to do. And all the other things that have been mentioned, we should work on. Impervious driveways, all those things are a continuum. But beyond that, there is the urgency of what we had happen. And we looked at that when we did the flush packs to fix the problem we have with sewage treatment facilities. And that money has been well spent. And we also put in a part of that fund for septic systems. So there are things in place that we have done. This is a new dynamic. It's an old issue. 72, we had it. So if it's an old issue, we need to look at what we need to do to not have it recur. And that would be the essence of what my role would be, to urge that kind of approach to it.
Okay. Cavante Doug.
Thank you for the question. I actually had 1972 written down here again, so thanks for looking at my notes. I wasn't even around, but I remember the pictures. And I will say that we have come a long way as a county. From 1972 to the recent flood water damage that we just had, I think we've made tremendous strides in the right direction. Do we have a long way to go? Yes. Can I tell you what we need to do tomorrow to fix this problem? No, but I will tell you we need to go to the drawing board and see what's going to be the best bang for our buck. Because during that storm, my car got flooded. And if anyone knows me, my car is my pride and joy. So to save things from like that from happening, we need to do whatever we can do to prevent this thing. And so now we have to be, far too often we are, as human nature, we are more reactive than proactive. And so we, instead of reacting to the problem, we already know it happened. It is destined to happen again. So we need to get out in front of this while we can. So bringing everyone in from the state level, from the local level, to see what we can do that's going to be best beneficial for our constituents.
Okay, Guy Hagan.
Cavante and I are in the same club. My car was totaled in the flash flood just right around the corner from Market Street and Church while I was in public hearing 2 years ago. Stormwater management has improved a lot, and so it's not as if we haven't been doing anything. We've made major steps in terms of local development requirements, state requirements, other things, and it can be expensive. But there's different kinds of stormwater management. There's dealing with the existing communities that weren't built with a lot of that in mind. And then there's how well and smartly we plan out the new communities, and there are two different challenges. So we spent a lot of money because downtown Frederick was valuable. We didn't want to lose it to put in the Carroll Creek project, and it worked. We had the same kind of rain, no major flooding of downtown. What it was surface level flash flood, had nothing to do with the goals of the project, which worked perfectly and has since it was built. That's very expensive. We have to deal with retrofitting communities like North Market. I used to live in that watershed, and I'm familiar with that problem. And it's not going to be easy, but we know why it's happening, and it can be solved, but that's a retrofit again. As we grow, how do we deal with it? Well, green infrastructure works for both. There are things that we know about stormwater management and utilizing, getting more to absorb into the ground, getting more to slow down, carrying what can't, more smartly. But the point is much less expensively. Retrofitting is expensive. Fixing the problems from flooding in your community may not be a government cost, but it's expensive. It costs the community, it does a lot of damage, it's a great concern. A lot of people are suffering because of that. These are avoidable problems, even though some things might happen sometimes because we can't figure out everything in advance. But we know a lot more than we used to about how to deal with it. Prioritizing the expenses to deal with the retrofitting, to mitigate the problem in Frederick and existing communities is one thing. Let's avoid massive costs and massive negative impacts later by making sure all of our new development uses smart growth principles and new stormwater management principles focused on smart growth. You can look at what they've done in places like Philadelphia, which you'd never think is a role model for this, but it is.
And Citizen Reader Jesse.
Yeah, it's a tough issue, as everybody says, so I'm not gonna repeat that, but when you got a federal government that underfunds a mandate for the Clean Water Act, money's gotta come from somewhere. And I'm not gonna mention any names why that's unfunded. I think we all know. Currently, last year, the county spent over $8 million just on stormwater management within the county. And so as we continue to get unfunded, the money's gotta come from somewhere, and it's taken from other places. I remember 1972 and I remember 1976, and they were both very different than what we've seen recently. They were bad, they were really bad. But what we've seen recently, I had friends in Braddock Heights that had their basements flooded. And they called me because they know I was running for office, and they're like, what do I do? And what happened to YMCA? I used to live on 9th Street. Nothing's changed around there much, but I did learn when I made some calls at the city of Frederick, and I think, I don't know if Gayla was saying this, the very old infrastructure, storm management infrastructure. So that's something that they need to look into, and I think they've identified that there is an issue because they don't know why it's flooding. I think we need to get together. I'd like to create a task force, and I think it needs to be done immediately because this is not going to stop. We've gotten 2 100-year floods within a couple years. This is not going to stop because guess what? Climate change is real. No matter how many people want to say it's not. It's real, it's happening. Look all over the United States. And we need to get this task force. We need to meet with subject matter experts. We need to meet with city. We need to meet with county. We need to see what other people, maybe throughout the region or other states that may have dealt with this similar issue, and look to see what's worked for them. But it's going to take it's going to take a lot of people to sit down and come up with some short-term and long-term solutions because we can't be flooded like this. It's too hard on people. It's too hard on their lives. It's hard on cars, and it's just something that needs to be addressed immediately.
All right. I'm trying to remember what the order is. So Mark gets, I think, the first response to the next one. Frederick County currently has a solid waste contract for the tracking of our trash and residential recycling out of the county. How do you think solid waste should be handled? And what initiatives will you support to reduce the amount of trash going to landfills and incinerators? Before you begin, I think we collectively decided we want to go to 1-minute responses just to be able to get more answers in from the audience and keep things moving. So Mark Long is first.
Okay. So a lot of people have been working on the what next process, and if you haven't read that plan, please do, because I'm not going to have time to explain it to you in a minute. But we certainly need to have more composting countywide. As I mentioned at the very beginning, I've been composting all my life. It's very simple to do at your own home, and even if you have a small yard, I would encourage everyone to do that. You can divert a lot of food waste from the landfill. But we need to implement it countywide, get restaurants involved and other businesses. So that's one thing, and I think that would be a big thing, because I think that's a lot of our waste right now is food waste. So we need to look at that and expand our recycling efforts wherever we can into multifamily and into businesses, and certainly expand those areas. And I have to stop already.
Thank you, Galen Clay.
Just a minute.
Well, I think first, we have to understand it's not a single solution situation. There are many parts of it that we need to look at. Composting is obviously one. Getting apartments and and condos to recycle. There was a state law passed that does require that. We need to make sure that gets implemented. That would certainly help. But I think the most important thing we need to do is decide if we want to keep shipping it out. Do we want to stick it in the ground here, or do we want to use a multifaceted approach to solve the problem? I do not want to send my problem to Virginia. I do not necessarily want to do landfills, because I've done that, and it's terrible to try to get a landfill accomplished. So what I would like to look at, all the things that we could put together to make some kind of a solution that makes sense to everybody and is workable. That's the important thing.
Thank you. Monte Duckett.
Education, 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 education. We have to educate people on the issues, because I can only speak from experience. You know, recycling isn't big in my community. It's not, you know, these are issues that we really don't focus on. And so we need to be educated so that we know how to dispose of things. We need to be educated so we know what to do. But far too often, the education isn't there. So I think we really need to provide the resources and the education so that constituents understand that this is a problem and that we are we are the root of the problem. So we really need to educate people about the issues.
Guy Hagan.
I wish I had more in a minute, but I've been working on solid waste issues, recycling, composting, and other things for literally 30 years since I started in Alameda County in California. Spent 8 years fighting the incinerator here, and I'm very happy that that didn't happen. I've been on the solid waste steering committee, the What's Next committee during the Gardner administration. We've done a lot of good things in this county, and I was on the board that instituted single stream recycling, although we need to get that to multifamily jobs. We need to get it to more businesses. We need to get it happening in institutions. We need to get deeper penetration in individual neighborhoods and participation. There's a lot, some of that's education, incentives, other things. We are at more than 50% now. There are state mandates that are ambitious and most people aren't even aware of, that we need to meet much higher targets. Composting in terms of our bang for the buck and weight, and reducing our major environmental impact, climate change impact, and all that is a top priority. But there are communities all around the country and all around the world that are using a wide variety of methods. There is no silver bullet, that are role models for us, that are reaching 70, 80, 85%. We can do it too.
Susan Rader Jesse.
I will continue the program of recycling, recycle, recycle among businesses and multi-dwelling units. Let's offer an incentive for people. Education is important, but let's offer an incentive, a tax credit. I know it's not popular, but it's something we could consider. My mom used to compost like Mark's, but when there was a little pile of stuff before it was even a thing. And I like the idea. I think you were involved in composting school pilot program. Why don't we do it in all the schools? It would teach the children. And one thing I am a big advocate for is I think we should have an environmental biology class in high school. It's not climate science, it's about how to take care of your environment. And we had it at Hood College and it was great. There's a lot of alternative energy sources, biomass, and I think for long-term solutions, look for ways to produce methane as a progressive way of new form of energy for waste. So there's things out there that we can look into for long-term goals, and I think we should continue down that path. Sorry, I'm talking so fast. I know I only had a minute.
I actually wrote an article for the Woodsboro Vauxhall Times and the Emmitsburg Journal called Trash Talk, where I talked about trash and what to do with it. So I would encourage you to check out my website, justinkiska.com, and read that, because you could get that in a minute. I can't explain it all. But I agree. I've come around to the recycling. I'll be honest, I was never big into recycling. It just never was something for me until I met my wife, and she has taught me the values of recycling. And now I think it is a good program, and one that does need to be expanded. I do think it needs to go to the businesses. I would love to see that. I hate that my business can't recycle. But I do think it comes from educating people on what the benefit of the recycling is. So I think that would be my first step to the problem, because yes, we do need to look at it in a bigger, longer term, whether it's landfills, incinerators, whatever the options might be in the future. But let's start with expanding the recycling program.
And all six got to answer that question. We move on to audience questions, maybe one last call. If you see Janice, raise your hand if you have any questions, and we'll try to get them all in before the clock runs out on us. And the first audience question, I think, is a good segue from the last one. Actually, there are a couple on this that have to do with the idea of composting and the issue of styrofoam and plastic bags. Styrofoam and plastic bags, a pollution problem in our county. Some jurisdictions have enacted bans on styrofoam bans and plastic bags, while some others impose a fee on plastic bags. How do you think this problem should be addressed here in Frederick County? And we'll start with Galen Claggett.
Ban the bag.
Come on, take that.
Thank you, Gail.
You looked at my notes.
Banning styrofoam, banning bags. I think it's you're not going to go into too many stores on today and find a plastic bag that you don't have to pay for besides, I think, maybe Walmart, you know. But I think we really need to put a ban on plastic bags. I said it last night, I'll say it again today. We need to ban plastic bags.
I think nowadays it's such a no-brainer compared to the way it might have been some time ago, because there are such adequate alternatives. There's, corn-based plastic bags that aren't plastic. There are or completely compostable, environmentally friendly things to put leftovers in at a restaurant or use as a carryout somewhere. Why would we be using styrofoam that doesn't break down, or what it doesn't break down the little parts and is a problem, or plastic which ends up in the ocean, or even if it's in our landfill? There's just no reason. We can exercise common sense here. Banning styrofoam makes sense because the alternatives are readily available and cost competitive today. Same thing with plastic bags, reuse bags. It's not that hard, it's just a matter of people getting used to it. In our house, sometimes you forget to take them to the store and you're mad at yourself. But you get used to it, it works, and there's just not any good reason not to do it. Local government can help provide incentives, and in some cases, outright ban certain products.
Susan Reed or Jessica?
As I said, I worked down Rockville when I first had to adapt to them asking me when I bought some food or merchandise, do you want a bag? I'm like, of course I want a bag. But then I learned they charged me for it. And you know what? I got used to not having a bag, and it didn't bother me. It just took a little education, a little adjustment. But you know what? I didn't have a bag to throw away or to stuff somewhere or to reuse or put in there. And so I have no problem with banning bags. I think that's a good solution. Why do we use foam? Because it's the weight. It's so lightweight, and people have gotten used to getting everything in foam. But lately I've gotten things that are alternative product. They're recyclable products, and I think that I agree with Kai. I think there's things out there that could be used besides styrofoam. It's going to be tough taking styrofoam coolers away from people, but that's multi-use, so that's not a problem. So I think we can do things, and again, it's an educational process. And don't tell people that we're going to do something. Tell them why it's good for them, and it's good for the community, and it's good for the environment.
Justin Kiska.
I would certainly love to encourage people to not use styrofoam, and I agree. I've seen less and less styrofoam packaging lately, and not to use the plastic bags. My trunk is full of reusable bags, so I never forget them. But on principle, I could not say ban plastic bags. Plastic bags can be recycled. But I just don't think I can take that step. I would encourage everyone to use reusable bags, but just on principle, I could not cast that vote to ban the bags or even to charge for them.
Mark Long.
As has already been said, there's lots of alternatives to styrofoam boxes, containers, and all that. I would certainly ban that, and there's any number of ways to shop and not take a plastic bag from wherever you're shopping. You can take your own bag, or perhaps have a paper bag or whatever. So yes, I would ban both styrofoam and plastic bags.
Very good. Now here's a good challenging question for a 1 minute answer. How will you handle the overcrowding pressures that residential growth is putting on our schools? And we'll start with Cavante Duncan.
One more time, please.
How will you handle the overcrowding pressures that residential growth is putting on our schools?
I think this is a complex issue. One thing that I really do want to see happen in the county is we really have to look at the issue around affordable housing and affordability. Can people afford to live in Frederick County? We have to look at that on a bigger scale and sort of find out ways, what's going to be best beneficial for our county. One thing I do know, yes, our schools are overcrowded. We can build more communities. And guess what? Our schools are going to be overcrowded. I think there are a number of schools that we do have that one way or another, we can sort of start moving some of our students from certain schools that we really don't need to some extent into some of our other schools, and we will see it will be a benefit there. For example, Lewistown Elementary School. We can start to eliminate and move some folks into other schools, and then we'll see our overcrowding decrease.
Well, I mean, it is an issue. There are overcrowded schools and schools that are not overcrowded and that are under capacity, and redistricting is always going to be one of the things on the menu of options to consider, but that's not a solution for everything. We're not, if you've got a kid living in a neighborhood, going to elementary school in Urbana, you're not going to want them to take a bus to Lewistown every day. I'm not suggesting you were saying that's where they ought to be redistricted from, although we did have a county council member who suggested we ship people up to Sibyllesville because it was not crowded. Jan Gardner and other people in the board I was on have worked very hard to get ahead of this problem. School capacity system-wide is below 100%. It's closer to 90%. We've made really good progress. We have seen the approval of some plans and some growth and cutbacks in some capital funding that create the possibility of that getting worse instead of better and losing some of that progress. But we have made real progress, and we have to continue to do that. And that means that, you know, there's adequate public facilities ordinance. There's a lot of different things we can do, but not enough time to talk about.
Yeah.
Susan Reader Jessica.
Yeah, the APFO was put in place in 1991 for a reason, and in 2012, the comp plan was loosened. The 2010 comp plan was loosened, and it made this problem even worse. We've got overcrowded schools. It's a case-by-case basis. My kids went to Myersville when there was a new development in there, and we had some portables. We had 4 or 5 portables. Now that's under capacity. So it is a tremendous task for the Board of Education and the school system to work on this problem. Redistricting, as a mom, yeah, you want your kids to go to school where their friends are going to, and that's always a tough issue because there are some people that would much rather be in overcrowded schools than have their kids go farther away. And so it's a tough issue, and it's got to be, overall, it's got to look at growth. It's got to look what type of things we manage. I'm a project manager by trade. When I have a project that's sometimes just 2 or 3 years down the road, I know we have to have things in place in order to make the project successful. So I would use that approach as well.
Thank you, Justin Kiska.
I was president of the Golden Mile Alliance for 3 terms, and Hillcrest and Waverly were at 140, 150% capacity. And we advocated to get the new Butterfly Ridge moved up on the list to be built. Well, Butterfly Ridge is going to be opened, and all 3 schools are going to be over capacity. But that isn't because of any new construction. That's just because of what was already there. Now, I do think, moving forward, we need to stop the bleeding. I don't think we should be approving any new residential developments that are not already on the books until we know that the areas that they're going to be building in, the schools can handle it. I think we need to, like I said, stop the bleeding first so that we can reevaluate, and whether it is redistricting, which I understand you don't want to take kids out of their neighborhoods, but I want to stop things first so that we can see what our next step can be.
Okay, Mark Long.
So yes, redistricting is part of the solution, and it's a solution, a partial solution that many parents don't like, many families don't like, but it's something that the Board of Education will need to look at. But we do need to have a strong, adequate public facilities ordinance and make sure that when new developments come along, that we do have the school capacity in place as the developments build out, and it's time so that as the development builds out, we will have school capacity. You know, it's a tricky balance, and it's a timing issue. So like Justin said, we need to stop the bleeding in that regard. But all the overcrowding hasn't come because of new development, and so there is that issue to look at, and, you know, we need to find more funding for schools, essentially.
Alan Claggett.
Thanks. Well, first, the state, as a result of the COP Commission, was putting $250 million a year into school construction. That sounds like a lot of money, but I think Frederick High School cost $120 million, so we know how far that goes. I was a member of the 21st Century Commission to study school funding, and there's a whole list of things that we can do. One is cost containment. I think we need to look at what the stadium authority is doing in Baltimore City on school construction for cost containment. The other thing is redistricting. When I was a commissioner, we built Team Barnes Road because the school in Jefferson was way under capacity, and there were portables in Middletown, and they wouldn't move. The Board of Education, after we redid the road, would not move students to go to Jefferson's elementary school. So I think we have to get off that concept that people are locked into a place. We're guaranteed an education, public education, but we're not guaranteed a static situation. We have to be able to move students.
Thank you very much. Final question, and I apologize if we didn't get to all the questions submitted, but if you had a question that wasn't answered, and if any of the candidates want to stick around a little bit after we conclude at 8, then hope to get your question answered then. Final question, what are your thoughts regarding the health and recreation benefits of bike paths throughout Frederick County? Maybe I would expand that to also ask just in general, the Parks and Recreation Department in Frederick County, anything else you might do or not do, but specifically bike paths throughout Frederick County. Start with Kai Hayden.
Well, I was on the Park and Recreation Commission, County Parks and Recreation Commission for 8 years, and you know, this is an issue that came up many times. I've certainly looked at what they're doing in other cities, and if you're looking lately, you see a lot more models of cities that are making serious commitments, serious investments, real, you know, not just an area stretch that's safe, but revamping the way biking and traffic and pedestrians are interacting throughout the city, and making dedicated streets, and using old rail lines for, you know, intra-city and intercity commutes and things like that. It's not simple. You have private property, you know, issues to consider. You can't just put bike paths everywhere you want. In some places we can put, you know, rural bike paths along rails and other public rights of ways, but how, if we're going to make biking a serious commitment to biking, it's going to be because we figure out how to move people safely within the city, within communities, not just in rural paths between them. That's recreational biking.
Thank you.
The rest of it's a different matter.
Thank you. Susan Reeder Jesse.
Thanks. I tell you, there's a lot of health benefits to biking. I just wish I had more time to do it. I think anytime you have incredible biking paths, I feel we're very lucky here to have Parks and Rec's program, many of the things we have throughout the county. When you have things like that, people want to come here to enjoy it. People want to bring their companies here so that their employees will enjoy it. And so it's a trickle-down effect. That enhances the quality of life offerings that you have as a community. I happened to listen to the council meeting last night, and I was just a little disgusted, and I won't mention the council's name. He actually asked, you know, it's a guy, actually asked about the paint that's going on some of the bike lanes. He wanted to know how much that costs, because that is, you know, that's a cost to the county. And, you know, the person was like, well, I feel a lot safer, and I think we want safety for our bikers, that painting is there because that's my space. But when you have people looking at those types of things, it distracts from the real benefits of having the biking and things like that we have here.
Justin Kiska.
I think it's pretty safe to say that none of you can look at me and go, hey, he's a bicycler. But I do understand that it is a quality of life issue, and it is something that companies do want for their employees. And it is a major health benefit to be out there exercising. Oh, I can't believe I just said that. I'm going to hear it from my wife tonight, too. The city of Frederick has done a lot when it comes to connectability and bike paths and walking trails. And I think that that's a good start. And now we need to look at their models and we need to start to expand outwards and see how to connect some of the towns. Granted, we have highways, we have waterways, so it might be a little tricky. But I think it is a benefit to the community as a whole. So it's not something that we should totally forget, but we need to look at how we can now expand out from the city and connect more areas.
Okay, Mark Long?
Obviously, there's many health benefits to any kind of exercise, including bicycling, and I myself don't do much biking, don't seem to have the time, but I know many of my friends are avid bicyclists and bicycle all over the county, and there's a great number of people that do that and enjoy it. It's partly exercise, just partly they like to get out in the countryside and just enjoy the view. So I think it is a quality of life issue. I think any of the areas that any cities across the country, across the world, where you see avid bicyclists and many bicyclers around. It's getting late. It does add a whole different dimension to the city and a higher quality of life to the cities, and it cuts down on traffic. Many people will bicycle to work. My son does in Washington, D.C., and I know many other people do. So it's something I think we need to expand.
Galen Klein?
Well, biking is fun, and when I was younger, there were 12 couples who looked for flat places to bike, like the Eastern Shore. So I do have some experience with biking and still do. I would support as much as we can the creation of bike paths, but remember when we're talking about roads, that's an additional cost, but I think it's worthwhile. And we already have lots of places like the C&O Canal that we can ride and enjoy, and there are markings already in place, even though they do cost some. I think it's a great idea, and for no other reason than it keeps me skinny. Thank you. Don't laugh. You're skinnier.
I will leave that one alone. But I am in favor of bike paths. I think it's something that I would love to see happen here in the county. As stated before, the city is doing a fantastic job, and if we can partner with them and sort of follow their plan, I think we'll be on the road to success. But one thing that we do need to take into consideration when we're talking about biking, there's really nowhere to put your bike when you get off of it. And so we really have to look at this thing on a bigger level than just, hey, let's put bike paths out. Well, I have somewhere to park my car, but I don't have anywhere to park my bike. And so we really have to look at this thing on a bigger scale, and then we're really remembering people's safety. We have to keep that in the forefront of our minds. Thank you.
Thank you. Time has arrived for concluding statements, and we're going to give each candidate 30 seconds to give their concluding statements. It's 8 o'clock.
It would cost us 3 minutes to go through that each.
3 more. We begin with Susan Reeder Jessup.
Oh, that was quick. Yeah, okay, start over. Everybody's great up here. And I've traveled throughout the U.S., which is why I always love to come back here. And I think we can get a lot accomplished in many different issues right now in Frederick if we focus more on what brings us together than what separates us.
Thank you.
I would just ask that you take a moment and visit my website, justinkiska.com, where you can learn more about me and where I stand on the issues. Feel free, if you have questions, email me. I'll be happy to answer them. And then I hope you consider voting for me on June 26th in the Republican primary.
Thank you. Mark Long.
Thanks again for everyone showing up this evening, and I appreciate all of your concern in these issues, environmental issues and smart growth issues. And if you want to learn more about my views on things, please go to my website, marklong.us. I would encourage everyone to go to the county website and look at Livable Frederick and read that lengthy document and try to absorb it. And again, thank you. I hope to get your vote on June 26th. Or before, tomorrow.
Early voting tomorrow. Galen Clay.
Thank you, and thank all of you for coming tonight. If I'm elected, I'm going to work hard to get rid of the partisan politics that exist in this county, in this state. I'm concerned about the level there and in the country, obviously. And I think that you did trust me for 20 years in public office, and I have been committed to doing the right thing at the right time, and I'd love for you to support me when you start voting. Thank you.
Thank you, Cavante Duckett.
Again, to our hosts, thank you to each and every one of you for being here tonight. Thank you, it means so much. One of the big reasons why I'm running for office is diversity. One thing we're missing in Frederick County is diversity, whether that be an African American, a person of color, or a young person. It's missing. And so one thing that I want to see come back to this county is a voice for the people that have been marginalized, that have been left out of the conversation. So that's why I'm here. So I do have a call to action to each and every one of you, that you call at least 10 people. Last night I said 6, today I'll say 10. Call at least 10 people, encourage them to go out and vote. Thank you again.
Thank you. Kai.
We have new charter government. We have a 7-member council. I have been working on and involved in and committed to and learning about environmental issues and how it connects to everything else in our community. In other words, thinking systemically or ecologically, if you will. And I think if you're going to have 7 members of a county council working with the county executive, it would be a really good thing to have one who is always going to make sure that's part of the discussion, who's always going to be looking at the issues and sharing the concerns and identifying the possibilities around this particular set of issues we're talking about tonight.
Thank you, Frederick Community College. Thank you to our organizers, Clean Water Fund, Climate Change Working Group of Frederick County, Friends of Frederick County, Green Frederick, Maryland League of Conservation Voters Education Fund, Potomac Conservancy, RALE, and 1,000 Friends of Maryland. Thank you to the candidates taking the time. And thank you for being concerned citizens. Election day, June 26th, early voting. Wow, starts tomorrow. Thank you.